Hey, what's happening? Before we jump into the show, I wanted to see if you had any music on a hard drive. You have a band, you have a project, and you want to self-release your own music. Well, there's an easy way to do it. You can go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate and go get your music up on all the streamers. You keep 100% of your royalties, and you can get 30% off by using this code. It's a great, easy way to get your music up on the streamers and share it with your fans, your friends, your family, your mom, your dog, everybody. Everyone wants to hear it. But go to distrokid.com/VIP/hyphenate, HYPHENATE, and send me the link. I want to hear it too. Send your mom the link. Send your dog the link. They all want to hear it too. We'd like to thank our sponsor, iZotope, the absolute leaders in intuitively designed plugins for audio restoration, mixing, and mastering. At iZotope.com, you'll find a plethora of tools and suites that will enhance your audio production, whether it's voice, video, podcast, or a full production recording session. Check out the industry-standard audio repair tool, RX11, or the multi-tool mixer plugin, Neutron 5, or the powerful Ozone 11 mastering suite, plus tons more. Go to iZotope.com and use the code FRET10 at checkout for 10% off. That's FRET10 to get 10% off at checkout. And again, the website is iZotope.com, IZOTOPE.com.
As an artist, it's, especially if we're doing music that's not that commercial or not commercial at all, it's incumbent upon us to push the envelope in terms of what sampling and what recontextualization through music can do, because we're living in this time where the technology allows us to do such incredible things. That's where the forefront of expression is, and we get so much from that when we listen to it.
Hello, welcome to Hyphenate with me, your host, Randy Randall. This is our episode for Thursday, November 20th. Tonight you can hear my guest perform at 2220 Arts and Archives, 2220 Arts and Archives, listening party with a live performance by my artist Ted Hearne tonight in Los Angeles. So if you're hearing this the day it comes out and you are in LA, go see Ted perform live. He is awesome. We have a great conversation coming up. And then he will also be in Chicago this Saturday, if you are in the Chicago area, at Athenaeum. I think I pronounced that correct. But you can find out more information on his Instagram at Head Turn. There you see what he did there. He switched the two letters. HEDTEARNE. Ted Hearne is my guest today on the show. I'm very excited to share our conversation. He has an incredible new record called Farming that's out now, and you can go order it on his website. It's on Death Bomb Arc, Brian Miller's label. I've known Brian for a lot of years. It's great to see all the great artists and records he's putting out. You can also go to his Bandcamp, tedhearne.bandcamp.com, TEDHEARNE.bandcamp.com. It was a really great conversation I have coming up with Ted. You can also go to his website, tedhearne.com, TEDHEARNE.com, for more information and to go see him live and to see the videos and to see past works, and also to buy the new record Farming, out now on Death Bomb Arc. Hope everybody's doing well. Here we are, almost done with November. It's been a busy month post Halloween. Getting ready for the holidays. Next week is the old Thanksgiving time. Hope everybody's doing well and hanging in there. It's fun. Got some good guests coming up. Next week we'll have Martin Atkins coming up on the Thursday. He's got a great show I want to tell everybody about as well. Martin Atkins, the next week's guest. I just want to make sure that if you were in the Chicago area, go see Ted, but also go see Martin playing. Let's see, where's the show at? I need to know where the show is. He's doing the Killing Joke Extremities. Reggie's. There it is. First time in 33 years. He'll be playing at Reggie's, and that's on Friday, November 28th. So that's next weekend. If you're in Chicago and you want to see Michael's reinterpretation of the Killing Joke record Extremities with guests, musicians. They're playing live. Justin Pearson from The Locust, former guest here, will be performing along with lots of other folks, and it's exciting. Reggie's in Chicago next weekend. Martin's interview will be up next Thursday, but I want to make sure we get word out early enough for everybody who's in the Chicago area hearing this. Go buy your tickets. There are some VIP packages with all kinds of fun stuff. He talks about it in the interview coming out next week, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be good. I wish I was there. I wish I was in Chicago for this. One night only, or I think it's 2 nights. I was saying Friday. I think it was Friday and Saturday. Super, super cool event. But also super cool this weekend is Ted Hearne in Chicago as well. So, yeah, let's go to my conversation with Ted Hearne. Here it is. Yeah, man, I dig the new record, Farming.
Thank you.
It's crazy. Tell me a little bit about making the record.
Oh, I mean, it was a huge process. I mean, it started with this incredible group, The Crossing, who is a group of contemporary vocalists. There's about 24 of them, and they're run by Donald Nally, who's their conductor. And Donald asked me to write a piece that could be performed outdoors on a farm, on farmland in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. And he sort of wanted in some way to the piece to sort of like deal with the concept of farming in some way or another. And, being someone who has zero agricultural experience and grew up in cities my whole life. I grew up in the city of Chicago and then moved to New York for a long time. And now I live in Los Angeles. Like, I kind of took that as a sign that, he wanted a different perspective, or wanted me to kick it out to some sort of more global or political topic that I could actually speak to. So I sort of thought about the meaning of the word the meaning of the word farming, the original meaning, which actually had nothing to do with agriculture in the English language, but actually was more related to the concept of ownership and the relationship between an owner and someone who is leasing land or who is leasing property from an owner.
Okay.
And it turned into a piece that's really about labor politics, contemporary labor politics.
Whoa, that's a trip. I've not heard that in terms of the etymology of farming. This was something about like land ownership and people renting or squatting on the land or using land use, and then they would owe proceeds of what they grew there to the owners, or
I mean, the farmer was the person who owned land, and actually before that, I mean, a farmer was just farming was tax collecting actually, and it wasn't until the people who were leasing land or who were spending time on the land, working on the land that someone else owned, and then they started performing systemized agriculture, right? That's when the usage of that word farming, came to be associated with agricultural practices. But the first meaning in the English language really is the same meaning as what we still say to farm out. And it's really like that is actually the first origin is from that word. I learned all this from the incredible Dr. Sarah Tabor, who has this amazing long-term podcast project called Farm to Tabor. And she's like a crop scientist and very interesting sort of sociological perspective and labor perspective on farm politics.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, this is definitely beyond my pay grade. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, me too, really. I mean, I'm a musician, I'm a musician.
But it's cool though. It's definitely interesting and inspiring.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it came from this, I guess, this idea that like, I don't know. I mean, the Crossing is a amazing group of performers, right? And they're doing contemporary classical music, and they're based in the city of Philadelphia, right? And there's this sense of like let's go out and sing on the land and appreciate the land, which I can be all for, right? But I also wanted to make sure that the project was really avoiding a kind of shallow agrarian nostalgia that we might encounter when, like well-meaning liberal urban folks like go out to the country and, say that, I don't know, this is endangered. And
it was a more simpler time, or kind of
more simpler time. And of course, I don't know. I mean, like, or, I just think that like
salt of the earth, these kind of terms get used. Yeah.
Exactly. And so the music that I wrote was very electronic, actually, and I wanted to sort of highlight the dissonance between the way that we might look at the way that we might look at the land, the way that we might look at ownership of the land, by asking all of these electronic musicians to come out and perform out there with the choir, and to create an experience that like sort of highlighted that dissonance. And so the album that we made afterwards is not really a reflection of this live performance, but is, in a way, it's a whole new beast because, there was so much required to like balance it and to create the dynamic that we could hear as an album.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was going to ask about that process, it was sort of working as a commission, right? You were asked to come out and collaborate and write for a particular piece. How does ownership work of things like that? I guess I don't necessarily work in those worlds. It wasn't like a company asking you to write for their commercial product.
No, I mean, no, it's a nonprofit ensemble, right?
Okay.
I mean, and so in the music world like that, I mean, it's not work for hire. I mean, it's like I'm an artist and I'm making the work and I still own the work and stuff like that.
Got it.
But of course, the musicians who work on the piece and the musicians who, especially the ones who commission the piece, like the Crossing, I mean, they're a really important collaborative party, right? So I mean, so together we created the work, and then
like writer performer relationship, like they're the performers,
right, and it's it's like performing arts world, right? Mm-hmm. So they got a grant from the Pew Foundation in Philly to create this large project and this large performance, and there were workshops around it. It was a theater piece, really, right? It was like a music and theater piece, but the process of making the album was totally different. And very interesting because, I think there's like a classical music idea that the album that's made, that the recording is like a document of the live performance, right? Mm-hmm. And I just think that that's not how a lot of other musicians and other genres of music, other styles are like dealing with it, really, right? So there was a lot of work. The production work is the composition when you're talking about an album. And the Crossing, all those vocalists recorded the music in 2023, and we had some live musicians, a couple guitar players, a couple drummers who were involved in the studio, right? But then there was so much more work to be done, artistic work, to create the album afterwards, and that was like a very non-classical process.
Got it. So meaning there's the performance that was created, and was that performance documented? Like did you record that? So there's that. Does that version exist somewhere else, and then this exists, or no? Did that?
We did. I mean, no, we did.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I was editing the video the other day from that project. I mean, we worked with a really great director named Ash Tata. And there was a whole theatrical team, costumes and lights and stuff like that to like make this piece that happened outdoors, right? But of course, like the documentation of that looks like, I don't know, it's like ideally we can make it look so that you feel like you might have been there at some point and you can say like, oh, this is an event that occurred, right? But I think the primary purpose of that is to like convince other people to help us do it again so that other people can experience it live, right?
Yeah.
But for you to really take in the piece of art, it's a different thing. You wouldn't do it that way, right? I mean, you'd want to either be there or maybe hear the music made another way, which is why we, why the album is a completely different thing.
It makes sense. Yeah. I mean, it's like when you film a play or a musical on stage.
Exactly.
It's pretty flat, but when you're in the room, it's incredible. It's engrossing. It's sort of,
that's the medium. That's the medium. Totally.
Yeah. You have to be there in the room. But once that live performance on stage is translated into cameras, even if you have 5 cameras or, lighting cues set up specifically to be captured for camera, it's still not going to be the same as a film. As we're getting in handheld cameras on, moving around people, changing locations. locations. They're two different
Right.
pieces. So that's almost
Right,
it's
right,
in a similar
totally.
sort of way where this sort of reinterpreting or being inspired from, or how do you say the album forming is connected to it? Is inspired by or interpreted
It's
through,
inspired
or
by
it's
it. I
like,
mean,
yeah.
a lot of the music is similar, right? I mean, the
Mhm.
music that the choir sang. I mean, almost all of that is the same that we did in the live performance, right? And there's a score, right, which I've been evolving a little bit, but it's essentially the same music,
I
right?
see.
But then there's so much more of a story that's told in the production, right? The mixing and um, the all the attenuation and EQ that is occurring, right? Like everything that, like all the placement and I don't know. I mean, it's like to use music production and the timbre of the sound as this malleable parameter in the whole storytelling. Like that's something that can occur in an album, and I really wanted it to be placed with albums of like experimental electronic music, right?
Mhm.
And to have the vocalist to have this choir sound, right, which sometimes is a very classical sound and sometimes it's not, be super malleable and like subject to a lot of different types of processing, and that's something that wasn't possible when we did a live performance, and also just the sort of like the comfortability with all the performers and everything. I mean, it's not their medium, right? So to be able to create this new thing was very exciting.
It's so interesting. Yeah. I mean, and then how much of there's a lot of electronic, sort of not necessarily like dance music. It's not EDM thing, but electronic experimentation and I mean, heavy editing
Yeah.
of all of the tracks. Like where does that fit within like a kind of neoclassical genre, or this is something that be just placed outside in this modern experimental world? Or I guess there's crossover.
Yeah. I mean, I would place it outside of like classical music mostly. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, although I think that there's something about, I mean, I don't know, you could see the piece as like you could see it as a big concept album, right? And you could also, I mean, there's relationships of, lots of, from the second half of the 20th century up till now, the idea of the concept album is somewhat related to the idea of like the classical music work or something,
Mhm.
right? I mean, we
Sure.
can see these great concept albums and like, how themes play out over time and like the juxtaposition of different elements in a piece like that, right? So in that sense, it's definitely like related, right, to like classical thinking. But I feel like the points of inspiration for the sound of it, even just as a live piece, but especially as an album, are much more. They're much more non-classical influences, pop influences, and electronic influences.
It's so cool. I mean, this is probably a good point. Like, let's go back. Where did you get started, and how did you get started in this world? What? Yeah.
Well, I mean, I grew up mostly loving classical music. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My mother was an opera singer, and I started appreciating like musicals when I was little, but then in high school, it's like really the thing that made me feel like I wanted to make music were albums that my friends introduced me to, right? Like not my parents, and not stuff that I sang in choir or whatever. But I just started to, like a lot of kids my age, I mean, be really, I loved rock and roll and loved hip hop, and I don't know, like it's so cliche to say this, right? But like in the late 90s, like Radiohead was such a huge influence for me because of it has something to do with, I think, something about their classical music, new music training of Tom York and Johnny Greenwood, like did communicate some sense of like, I don't know, the urgency in the like the combination of the urgency plus the like long form ideas in like their works, and something about that just felt so, and then of course the sophistication and the I don't know, the combination of all these electronic elements with rock elements that just like made a huge difference for me and was very inspiring in terms of like, oh, there's so much there's so many things you can do, like creating a large work.
Right. Not just the rock song or the hip hop song, or it can exist.
Right,
in these,
right.
Can get more ambitious. So where do you
like big ambitious works? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what do you start working on first? What are some of your early projects?
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Like I also was just so, I think the like the way that, the way that like hip hop artists in the 90s were in the early aughts were like approaching political ideas and were really like speaking their truth in a way that was not only text-based, but like the combination of different samples that like had political content in them, even just in the sort of the sound of them and the way that they were laid adjacent to each other, was a huge influence for me and sort of like got me thinking a lot about text setting, you know, and making larger works that that could use, I don't know, like contemporary political ideas in them. So I wrote a piece called Katrina Ballads. That was one of my like first pieces sort of out of college. And that was a piece that like set just a lot of primary source text that happened that people said in public the week following the aftermath of Katrina. And I think that I felt very strongly about that. I was like, I was in New York at the time, and it was a moment of kind of, I don't want to say political awakening, but it was like a moment of shock and also kind of feeling like helplessness and it was a real check on, I don't know, my own privilege and my own distance from those events, like while being far away from them. So I just felt like, how could I string together a group of songs, basically? So I made this album of songs called Katrina Ballads, which where people are singing the words of individuals who are just responding to it after that aftermath. So there's survivors and relief workers, but also politicians.
That's so interesting. I guess I don't mean to be so nerdy on this going down, but I mean, when you use text like that, does that get into publishing, or are there like attributions, or how does one work with you know what I mean? Or I guess acknowledging it, or because they're not samples. It's not something that you have to clear. You're just using their words.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're like.
Do you say?
Yeah, from a legal perspective.
Do you say their names?
Oh yeah, totally.
Okay,
well, I
that's
mean,
part of it.
I can. Yeah, for sure.
Drill it in,
I mean, I think that, I consider it kind of like sampling, and I also think of my work as documentary in a way. And the, like, knowing the context of the sample or of the source material of the text is an important part of it and can only enrich your experience, you know? So actually in Katrina Ballads, the names of every track, I mean, that's the title of the track is the person who said the words.
Interesting.
And every track is just one, you know, is just from one source. And they, you know, they're different. There's different moods to each of them. And so I think part of what, I mean, it's a younger piece for me, right? So I think about it, I've like learned a lot since then, but I think that part of the way the piece works is that you are able to like place, you know, I don't know, like I set the words that Kanye West said on the telethon on, I think, September 2nd, what was that? That was 2005, right?
Yeah, with Mike Myers, where he said George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Mike Myers is next to him, right? Yeah. Exactly. George Bush doesn't care about black people, but he also, like, you know, he said a bunch of stuff before that, right? So he set those words to music, and part of what part of how the piece would work is that you understand who said the words. You may have some context, you know, you probably have some context for how that originally occurred, and then that is like placed against what the music is, and they work together, and they're different, and you get to like experience the tension between those two things, and that's part of where the art is, or where the commentary is. And then it's like also hopefully it's like not something that the piece or the composer like tells you. It's something that you know, it allows for questions and dissonances that then you can work out as an audience member yourself that is different from everyone, you know? I mean, and then there's different tracks that are, they all have sort of different
relationships
right?
to each other.
Like, totally. But I was, you know, I was pretty young when I made that piece. So like, I think about it, you know, sort of differently now. And I've written other pieces since then that sort of deal with it differently. I wrote a piece about Chelsea Manning and you know, which is similar in terms of like taking source text that occurred publicly, or that was public, it was made public.
Oh yeah.
And
Sorry, not to interject. Yeah, but again, just getting back to that idea.
no.
Like when you cite it as source text, is there any kind of clearance, or are there any kind of permissions that you get around that, or is this considered fair use? Or I guess, I mean, again, not to be in the legalese, but I'm just so curious as an artist or as a writer myself, how does how does someone own their words that have been published if they're not considered as written text, right? I mean, there'd be, if they wrote it in a book or they wrote it in an article, then there's an ownership of that. But if it's said publicly, like on the news or in a public event, and it's documented.
Well, I mean, right. I mean, I think we have to consider the doctrine of fair use, and I feel like in this setting, in this sort of like documentary artistic setting, where there's really like no financial, I don't think that these works are would take away from the financial, like the profit that the people who originally owned the text might use it for, right? Also, like for instance, it's
I guess like the newspaper or like wherever they'd be cited from, right? If it was
exactly like right.
I mean, like the New York Times interview, or it's quoted,
right? I mean, like the telethon from the post-Katrina telethon was on NBC, right? So like NBC, I believe, owns that.
Interesting.
That text, right? And if you put the video up on YouTube, then NBC might have the right to say you have to take it down.
Or if you sample his voice of that, then that's audio.
They may have the right to say that, right?
Sure. Right.
Now, I feel, philosophically, like, this is how art is made, through sampling and through borrowing and through dialogue with other artists and other materials, right? I think that it is incumbent upon the, in our society, it's incumbent upon the person who owns the rights to something, the intellectual property rights to claim harm, and then to deal with it at that point, right? So like, I'm not going to ask NBC for the right to use this, like because I feel like it's first of all, it's an important thing that happened in our country, in our world, right? And the thing that I'm doing is, fair use has, I think, there's like 4 provisions that would call it fair use. And like the work that I do in this way, I feel like definitely fulfills 3 or 4 of them. And, I'm to ask permission. And also, why would they ever give permission for something like that? Right. I mean, It's like, there's literally no benefit, but it's also there's no detriment. Also, why would they sue me? It's like
Sorry, yeah, maybe I opened up a can of worms, but it's just so I'm curious because again, living in a world of samples and clearance and being a musician myself and knowing about like, okay, well, we can't sample that, but we could play something off of it, or there's a whole sound-alike world, or there's a big world in this kind of, and these conversations coming up of music and IP and all of these things that to create work based on public figures' words that they've said in public is fascinating because it kind of fits in that kind of gray area, which is an interesting sort of place to be. And again, not like there's any large financial gain from it. Like, these aren't,
I'm not
foundations. Sorry.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I mean, don't apologize. It's super interesting. It's also, it's a can of worms. I mean, it's like, I'm not a lawyer.
No, nor am I. Yep.
And I try to, and when I feel like as an artist, when I think about like the potential for like, is this a good idea to have all of my bases covered? Like that kind of legal thinking, I never feel very creative, What I really like to think about is like, is this harming anybody? Right. Like, cause I am very interested in using material from the world that I live in. And I'm very interested in a lot of, like contemporary topics, right? I mean, I'm interested in what people say in the world that I live in. And so I want to respond to those things. I'm not very interested in like writing a poem about it using my own words, right? I'm sort of very interested in like, well, what are those words that this person said? And so when I'm engaging in that, I always want to think like, is the use of the material, is using this like harming someone, is it disrespectful to a person? And I never want to do that. Right.
Mhm.
But like, if I'm talking about like, oh, well, I don't know, like, I can't think about it legally because it's such a bummer. And like, also like we live in a very litigious society, and then I don't know. It's like, I'd rather just like, if someone has a problem with it and they want to like, address it, then address it with me. You know what I'm saying? But that's
Yeah.
sort of like that's like a later problem. And like, and if the art is then not, I don't know, if it's not allowed to like be sold or make money, or I mean, then it's like, okay, well, that's like, I mean, I guess that's the consequence, but that hasn't happened. You know?
Sure. Yeah. No, again,
That's how I try to think about it. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. I probably just bumped on something as an artist myself, and I've used sampling and reworking and editing, and just worked in so many of these kind of fields, and it's just like the thought of using just text, just take their words and make sure that they're attributed to the person correctly, and it's like, oh yeah, that seems to just be you're just out there, and again, like you say, if there's no harm, it seems to.
Well,
work,
I mean, yes. I mean, I think like I would not do that with a poet who wrote a text, right, without asking permission.
But again, that lives
and,
as a piece. That's their work, right? Those words, or if it's a songwriter, if they wrote those songs those words in a song, or even an author in a book,
right.
You know what I mean? Those live within a piece of art that they've put a frame around and put a stamp and published by, and those words exist as their art. But words and statements made just in public in interviews or things like this, you know what I mean? Even if someone were to take a transcript of what we said and then use them in some other fashion, you're like, okay, yeah, I said all that. I mean, if it were taken out of context and spun in a way where, does, in some way that made us look, change the content of what we said to make it seem as though we said something completely different, or we're supporting somebody, like, it's, Randy Randall said yes. And like, well, yeah, sure. I'm sure I said yes many times about many things, but then applying that yes to something that I disagree with, you know what I mean? Well, wait a second. There's no context included in this piece.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is up to people to like determine that context. And we're consenting to do this publicly. Right. So I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I guess we could go down the road and think of
we don't have to
think of the example that proves it, right? But I mean, it's, I don't know. In the Katrina Ballads piece that I was mentioning, like, I did ask permission from two sources, and there's a newspaper article, right? I probably wouldn't do this anymore because it's a little corny or something, but like the piece begins with a newspaper article that's like that it predicts that that New Orleans is very vulnerable to a hurricane, right? And so I asked permission from the person who wrote that article, because I thought that was a little different. It's not like something that was said publicly. It was like, this is a journalist and this is their article. So I wrote them and said, do you mind if I use that? And then there was another interview. It was like an extended interview that to me it felt like it wasn't like a spontaneous comment that was live broadcast or something like that. It was a little bit more curated, and so asked permission of the person who said it and the people who edited it. And so that seems
at that point, due diligence. Yeah, I mean, more than enough responsibility.
At that point, it seemed like that.
Yeah,
sure,
that's incredible. So yeah, I guess that's just.
But a lot comes from there's so much.
No, go on.
Oh, sorry. We're talking about each other. Say that again.
No, go on. I forget.
I was gonna just say that
there's a lot that goes on.
I was just gonna say that I think about sampling all the time. I think about the incredible amount of like recontextualization and that power that created this like incredible new kind of music and music making, right? Which is now, like almost 50 years old or whatever, but the revolution of hip hop, like such a huge part of that movement is the juxtaposition and the recontextualization of music that has already been recorded, and an understanding of like all the different strains of culture that exist in music and the cultural expression without using words, right? And of course, then there's like poetry on top of it a lot of the time, but part of this, like a fundamental part of the hip hop aesthetic, is this like recombinatory collage, right? This impulse to like reflect and use and then recontextualize the culture that we share. And there's so much power in that, but it's also not specific the way that language is, or even an abstract poem is more specific because of the meaning, the way that language works, than the associations of music, which are vast and change with everybody. And we can have we share them commonly, but we also can't put our finger on exactly what the meaning of like a sound is in the same way, but it's there, right? And like that's so amazing about sampling. And I think it's been kind of shitty, like how the U.S. court system and giant corporations, record labels, et cetera, have really controlled that conversation in the legal sphere, so as to in many ways like blunt the creative power of hip hop and music, and that as artists, it's especially if we're doing music that's not that commercial or not commercial at all, like it's incumbent upon us to like push the envelope in terms of like what sampling and what recontextualization through music can do, because we're living in this time where the technology allows us to do such incredible things. That's where the forefront of expression is, and we get so much from that when we listen to it.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting, so fascinating. I think again, the culture and the technology has evolved so much since the 80s and 90s, when there was a legal sort of clamp down on a lot of this kind of like master rights and who owns what. I think it's changed, and also right. Music itself has been devalued so much since then. You know what I mean? The actual value of a piece of music, if it's worth 0.0008 cents per play, I'd rather just you fucking give it away at some point. You know what I mean? Or you're basically doing worse than giving it away. You're making me waste my time trying to chase down accounting for it. So if it was free, I wouldn't care. Yeah. But now I have to like wait, look for a check for 2 cents and then try to cash it. You know what I mean? It's like now you're wasting my time.
Yeah.
So it's not just. It's but that being said, that if that's what music is now, if you're legally allowed to sell streams of music for fractions of a penny, but then we'll sue somebody if they ever make money off of using that same piece of music for something else. Again, it's just chasing the hits. If somebody, God forbid, makes any money off of something, then they owe that to everybody else. You know what I mean? There'll be piranhas will come out and eat all the profits of something that actually becomes a hit. But the reality is, kind of living on a DIY sort of our experimental sort of world is like, I kind of get a feeling too, like it is all fair use in some ways, because owning the masters to something is, it's become so devalued. It doesn't even really matter. And also the other side of it too is through social media and even this like stitching, like, oh, Stitch coming. And, there's a dialectic that happens visually and through music and through dialogue online every day, to the point, where this creation of virality and memes. Then you get something like 6-7 that has zero context, yet is like this, you know what I mean? This like, like a viral sort of like vocal tick, you know what I mean? That gets passed around, I have small children, and it just becomes a fun thing
as
to say.
As do I.
Right. But you realize the context doesn't mean anything, but it's this sort of way. And in some ways, even with that, and especially now being a father of children, it's like the amount of the fire hose of content through YouTubing and the video game content, all the streamers, that is just like fire hose shot at our children. Like they should be able to own all of it. If I'm forced to watch these shitty ads for these shitty fucking video games, I should be able to sample those. Like you've now given me permission. If I can't skip that ad, then I own that ad then. Like you've just put it in my brain and I get to throw it back at you in whatever form I feel, you know what I mean? Almost as a protest of like time, attention economy, if the gig economy, if you just bought my attention, well, now I own it. Then that's going to live in my brain.
Yes.
So I should be able to do
whatever
I want
to,
in some kind of protest fashion.
Totally. I mean, right. No, totally. I mean, you make me think of some really, some artists that are really important to me. Some electronic artists like JPEG Mafia or Sophie, and like One O Tricks Point Never, the way that sampling works in that music, or in One O Tricks music, but also and JPEG, but the like, I don't know, the embrace of music from the advertising landscape, the sonic landscape that we live in, the capitalist landscape, right? And the reappropriation of it by an artist like Sophie is so huge. for us as a culture. And, like that ethos is a huge part of what farming is about, because a lot of the text from that, I mean, the text comes from Jeff Bezos, the text comes from the colonist William Penn, and then it also comes from advertisements that are related to the modern food service industry, like from Uber Eats, for instance. And the, Sophie, when they asked her, like, what genre of music do you write? She goes, advertising, and it's like, but you get a sense that it's like that's both very cynical and very sincere at the same time. It's like, it's an incredibly meta-modern approach. And like, that, I wanted to write a piece that, that was like an homage to that sound and that approach, and that approach to electronic music and to album making, that also featured like a lot of, human vocalists and the humanity of like, what does it mean to put someone else's words into my mouth?
That's so, yeah, it's fascinating, to think about in that kind of way. And I mean, but I think also, again, just not to keep harping on the same idea, but the devaluation of music, and the idea of advertising music being the only music that probably pays, for an artist to make, if you're a young musician, rather than writing a like a Brill building sort of thing, where it's these quick pop songs, but those could also be ad songs. So much of our like, early rock and roll sort of foundational stuff was could be jingles, could be a rock hit, could be a girl group, that could be the Shangri-Las, or it could be for Ajax scrubbing soap. There was always that fine line and shared DNA between that type of commercial music, which would then filter its way through the decades to get to us. But to say that you're purposely creating advertising music is probably a profitable way to look at it, if you're a musician trying to make money, and not saying that's not you, but I'm just saying in general, like as a poke in the eye of like, yeah, this is all used for advertising anyway. That's ultimately, music is always used to sell something else, even if you're not directly selling it to a company. If by performing in bars, you're selling beer. By performing at a festival, you're supporting the sponsorships, or by performing in, almost any kind of commercial space, your music is a candle that people come to, moths to a flame. And then while they're there, they consume other advertising, sort of the carrot. I don't know. Is that too cynical?
I think no, I'm not at all. I mean, I guess I think I with Sophie, for instance, I think of that as like I think if we're saying that as an acknowledgement that she's in that world, that she's in the world that we are all in, right? That this saturation, this total saturation of I mean, now it's just slop, right? But advertising content, capitalist content, we are in it, right? And that she's not setting herself outside of that, but that the critique comes from within, and that to take it and to recontextualize that content in an extreme way is actually a pretty anti-capitalist action. Like the way that because her music is like, I mean, is it commercial? It's like, I mean, it's good, but I mean, it's like pretty extreme, right? There's an extreme sensibility about it, and an amazing artistic commitment that would never, I mean, times change, right? But at that time it was like, it's not selling a product. It's like in like sort of in hypercolor, like daring you to like actually buy the product, or daring you to like or to like sticking your face in the thing that you just bought or something. It's a much more aggressive action, I feel like, and yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, I don't know, the early rock sort of examples that you're talking about, that's really interesting. But I guess I see that that type of when I think of that, like that type of music, I guess I see that as like not the beginning of a process, but toward the end of musical ideas, like and when we talk about early rock and roll, I mean, so much of that came from Black artists in the United States, right? And like music that wasn't commercial, and then became commercialized as it became mainstream, so that like the edges get like sheared off in order to sell things, right? So when we talk about artists like Sophie, I mean, I think of that as like a sort of finding the edge in this like super plastic, like post, like the landscape that is like now like full of slop and is like so, and it's been sanitized so much, right? Like finding the edge in that like super sanitized sound, and to the extent that she like, she created all of her own instruments, like it's all coming from synthesis, right? But to create this sound that is like so plastic, just, I don't know, incredible.
It's amazing. Let's talk about, just some of your other composition work and sort of coming,
Sure.
sort of like, how do you find yourself in Los Angeles and, sort of balancing, work and creation and performance, and what is this, how do you sort of balance what's done for money, what's done for artistic purposes, or how do you kind of pull it all together in this hyphenated sort of way?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in it. I mean, I think in a lot of ways, my heart is still in New York City. I lived there for a really long time. And the way that the city is organized, and the way that there are, you can, as an artist, you can live like going from place to place on the subway very easily. And there's many different artistic communities, and I don't know, coming of age there, I just felt like there was a cross-pollination of style that that was great. And at the same time in New York, I just feel like there's this like, or at least when I was there, there was like a appreciation of the substance of the content that artists made, right? And that appreciation was like sort of trumped everything in a lot of art and music communities, like really just like, what are you doing? What are you saying? Rather than like how many people were there, or what does it look like, or did you make money doing it? Right. And Los Angeles, there's some really, really amazing communities here and amazing artists, but I worry that just the impact of the film industry and the music industry, the commercial music industry, and like how many people here are beholden to that industry in some way. I think it can take a toll on the idea that like the thing that you're trying to make is like just you're trying to provoke some ideas through the art itself, and that's maybe the most important thing, more important than like, is it making money, or are there people there? What does it look like, or whatever? What does it look like to be there? But I don't know. Maybe I'm just cynical about it, or I miss New York. I moved here because I teach composition at the University of Southern California, and I got an opportunity to teach people composing, and it's been great. And I lived in New York for like 14 years basically, and I had a new kid. My son was like 2 or 3 when we moved, and I just thought it would be cool to like have a different experience, but I mean, it is also amazing. Of course, LA is great, but
it's different, right? It's a big place.
It's different.
Yeah.
Lots of great things about it. And the students that I work with at USC are like amazing. And I have a great colleagues there. And it's such a, I feel like it's such a gift to be able to have a job like that at this time,
Yeah. Well, and imagine, the transition probably happened around the COVID and the shutdown and everything too. Sounds like within the last 5 years. And that's just a different, from what I've understood, the experience in New York and the experience in LA were very different around that.
I know. No, I was here for COVID, and it's like really traumatic for a lot of people in New York, of course. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, the LA New York sort of dialogue is always forever ongoing, especially within these creative communities.
Yeah.
But no, I'm a lifelong born
Where
and
are you
raised
based?
in LA. I'm here in LA. I'm
Oh,
up
cool.
in I'm up
Oh,
in,
cool.
in the foothills near
nice.
Sunland, Tahunga, La Crescenta.
Oh, nice.
So,
nice.
yeah.
Beautiful.
And
I mean, it's so beautiful here.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we always joke about my wife. My wife works remotely for a company that's based in New York. So we're always, talking about the different time frames and where everyone's at there and what they're, the events that are happening that she doesn't get to do because we're here. But then we go out to the yard or we look up at the mountains and we do these things. We're like, okay, well, it's a different, it's just a different setting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right. Of course, the life outdoors is like just unparalleled and incredible.
Yeah.
And, and the family loves it. I mean, it's great. It's great.
Sure.
It's a great city. I just, I just miss New York sometimes,
Yeah.
And I'm out there. I'm out there a lot.
The struggle for substance is something that I think, I find it hits everywhere, and especially, but in that way, but it's an interesting observation, but it's tricky. And I think LA right now is going through such a, sea change in a lot of ways too, where that industry of music and art and film and all those things are kind of just disappearing. It's like sand through the fingers. A lot of people that live here, used to be able to kind of work all the time in these creative sort of places, and you could always pick up money doing something, at least on the periphery of the creative work that was happening nonstop. Whether it was film shoots or photo shoots or music videos or making music, there was a lot of just kind of room for craftsmen or for working folk, and then you could have a creative practice on the side of that. But I think a lot of that's going away, and a lot of that work is drying up, and so I think that changes the creative landscape for a city like Los Angeles.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, yes, totally, and I think that's true in New York too.
Sure.
I think that I just. But I was just.
I
spent my 20s there, right? No, but I mean, I'm also
it's
just
maybe I'm just
time. Yes, but maybe it's nostalgic for the way that it was before or something,
That's something.
But what?
Oh, no, I was just saying, that's something we talk a lot about on this podcast is like just the aging process and getting to the 40s and like, I know there's stuff out there. I just don't, I don't connect with it. And that's probably part of by design. It's not an accident that the music that's being made by younger generations isn't necessarily fitting hand in glove with what I'm interested in, because it's the rebellion of those every 4 years. So you have to throw everything out and start new and create things fresh for your world.
Yeah.
No one, people over 30 don't understand. I was there. Right. Yes, you're absolutely correct. People over 30 don't understand.
Totally.
And when you're on the other side of 30, you're like, exactly, I don't understand that. That's a bad thing. And they're on the other side going, you don't understand. That's a good thing. And you're like, right. Okay. This is this invisible creative line of like, but I'm so enthralled with it. I think I can play the role of grouchy old scene guy, and I can play the role of supportive dad figure, older brother, uncle, I'm like, fuck yeah, punch him in the face. Yeah. Stick it to him. Even though I'm looking, I'm looking at the news going, Trump's about to starve everybody and create a third world war and a civil war at the same time. But yeah, we should complain. We should throw tantrums everywhere we get. But I realize that's that's the same stuff people told me. Like why were old people when I was in my 20s, old people were always so obsessed with the news. They were watching 9/11 all the time. Like, come on. That's so dark. You just get outside, go make art, go ride bikes, in the streets all night and do graffiti and go to underground shows and do those things. Don't sit around all day worrying about 9/11. Let's go do something else, and let's go riot and go protest and go do things. And that's the energy I had. That's what I had to bring to that culture at that time.
Yeah.
And I
100% agree. No, I mean, we need the grouchy old men, but I also don't, I don't know. I mean, what the best thing about having a teaching gig is to learn from the students, and like, if I didn't have that gig, I would hang out with my children and occasionally would see my kids' friends. Right. But I would not, I mean, my kids are 9 and 13 right now, but I would not have this like, creative conversation ongoing with all of these different people who are like between the age of like 20 and 30. Right. And like, that is, such a gift, and like, I've learned so much from students and like, there are some of them, are listening to and responding to this music and art that I wouldn't have come across,
Tell me a little bit about that. Well, tell me, what are you noticing? What are you seeing? How do you characterize it?
Oh, I mean, well, it's like, I've taught there for 10 years. Right. So I've seen many different styles. Right. I mean, like, starting from the beginning, I mean, I think like when I a year or two after I started, I mean, I had this student who was obsessed with vaporwave, and we got really into like looking at a lot of different vaporwave artists, and it was like, it was really cool, gratifying to be able to help this student sort of contextualize the movement in, like related to like other art movements and music movements that have happened that person he didn't know about, but also he introduced me to lots of different vaporwave artists, and that really like affected my own composition and my own way of thinking, right? Because it just really spoke to my aesthetics, and I think that I think about that student all the time, and I have a lot of students like that where they're a really good musician, and they have this like pull to something, and investing, being like vulnerable enough to be like, I don't know that artist. Like, let's like talk about, like, you tell me about the artist, and then I will like tell you what I hear. Mm-hmm. That's really paid off, and I think it's actually made me much less grouchy than I might be, right? Because as like being a dad, it's like there's so much work that you just have to do to like keep things moving, right? And you're raising people, and it's just like, God, driving people to school all the time. It's just ridiculous, right? And there's like the idea that like you're gonna like go out at night and go to clubs every night. It's like that, like hear new music. Like that's like, I don't know, I can't do it. I mean, I love the nighttime. I try to go out, but I can't as much as I want to, right?
Sure.
And then the idea that I don't know, like I have all this creative work I want to do, and I want to teach sometimes too. So balancing all that with the childcare, and then like keeping up on all the new music that comes out, and then also maintaining the creative, like the sort of the critical impulses to like separate what I think is good from what I think is bad, and like update the aesthetic and all that stuff, and like this is like PR, whatever. I mean, there's so much work to do to that, and it's like kind of fallen away. I also stopped reading as much as I like to, it's like things like that. We just have to like focus on making things go. Yeah. So like the actual conversations with people in their 20s has been like artists in their 20s has been like really, really good for me.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, I do my best to get out to as many shows as I can, or I'm able to, or I'm invited to, or, I can play. Yeah. And it's great. I also, I do some production work and some writing work with younger people, and it's so fun. And it's just like, well, what is this? What is that? Like, where did this thing come from? Like, well, you could trace, now we're tracing emo back through the 90s and the mall through Chicago into DC. Yes. Kind of looking at things and kind of breaking it down. Going, there, here's sort of some roots and sort of what this could be, but I don't know what exactly you're responding to, because every time it gets reinterpreted, there's a new sort of flavor to it, for better or worse. Like, here's where I turned off, here's what I liked, and here's where I stopped liking it, but for you might, whatever you find, you have to find your entryway to whatever kind of music you do, and then take from that the part that you think is worth, preserving or pushing forward or pushing off of and inspired by. But it can, it's never ending, sorry.
Yeah. No, totally. It is never ending. Yeah. You just mentioned the emo stuff. I mean, it's just funny, like my son, Big 13, like, it's just, I'm seeing like the way that certain 90s things are like really cresting right now. Like they're so back, and it's really interesting. I'm just like wondering what he and like his generation is going to, this younger than my students, obviously, but like, what are they going to take from that? And like, what are the, the things that they'll pull out of this culture that was like really so important to me, constitutive when I was growing up. And then like, what are they going to pull out that is the same, and what is different? And like the way that we relate to that could be really cool. I should mention, I mean, I had this student named Rohan Chunder, who is, one of my best students ever. And now we collaborate all the time. He's a huge part of the album that we just put out called Farming. And he goes by Bakudi Scream, but cool. He's one of these people who is, just like extremely open and listening to tons of stuff, but ear to the ground and just hungry and ambitious the way that like a young artist is in their 20s, and when I met him, he was like that. And we ended up having like so many dialogues about music, and I was able to, I provided some teacher stuff around like sort of his composition, but but he also actually provided teacher stuff for me in terms of like what is relevant, you know, and sort of like, I think that if I wasn't able to interact with students like that, my taste would be so calcified, and it would be so like, I would just inadvertently, I would just be an older person in terms of taste. And it's like, I like that he was always like challenging what that is. And he's a great producer, and, like, he's now collaborated with me on several of my projects, and he is an incredible electronic musician, but also is able to like really get into the weeds around the ideas in the works, and then is really good at sort of challenging them. And from this perspective of like, well, make sure that you like know what you're talking about, because you might just know what you think you know what you're talking about, but actually you haven't really thought about it since like 2009 or whatever, because we can get like that,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. That dialogue is just important.
That's so cool. And I guess, yeah, I mean, anything in the creative world, now in 2025 wouldn't be complete if we didn't, bring up our lords and enslavers, AI. I mean, how do you interact with that at all? Or I guess, especially speaking to younger generations, I'm sure they're asking more about it in ways, or interacting with it in ways that, is different than we would from our generation. Like, what's your sort of point of view as a teacher or as an artist working in experimental composition? How does this fit?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I think it's, I think that the AI technology with respect to music as it exists now, like, when we see the way that it's being embraced and applied by, I don't know, giant corporations like Spotify or whatever, it helps reveal to us like what those corporations really are, and how those corporations do not exist to support artists. It's not a, the platform. And it's also like, it's like, those corporations, Spotify, it exists to make money. It's a tech corporation. It's a giant tech corporation. And like so many, right, the narrative has been like invest in us and we will make the world a better place. And we are going to do this benevolently, right? And it's not. It's a lie, right? It's like these corporations exist to make money, and to aggressively expand their reach to as much of the market as possible, and to define the market so that they can control it, right? And like the use of AI technology to make music that like whatever corresponds to a mood that their research thinks that is needed or whatever, and is just music created by like mining the content of real human being artists, and I don't know, using technology to like create a product, right? I mean, it shows us what those corporations are about. And but then also I think we have to, as artists anyway, we have to like see that, we have to understand that like that technology is part of the world that we live in. Technology is always a part of the world we live in. So I urge people to like think about this technology the way that you would think about even the oldest technology, like glasses or like a loom or something, right? It's like part of that. So the artists need to be able to respond to it, right? I really believe that like if AI can make music that fits into the, that like makes a certain chunk of people happy, or makes it like satisfies the need of a certain chunk of people to like create a mood or sustain something, then it's really not art anymore. It's like, it's wallpaper that people want. And like, I guess we have technology to make wallpaper. And so we need to ask more of our art, and like, we need to continue to interact with each other. And I'm a humanist, on a human level, I mean, I had just got in an argument with a friend who said we have to stop being so humanist. I don't think that person wasn't arguing to like totally embrace AI music. But I mean, I think like, we can't stop it. I think we can stop corporations from exploiting artists, but we need to like we need to always place that in the context of like labor politics, like larger labor politics, right? In terms of the music technology, like if your skill set is being taken over by AI technology, if you consider yourself an artist, then artistically you need to respond to that. Like I can't now, in terms of the ability to make money, I mean, AI is depriving many, many, many people in many industries, right? Out of their ability to make money. And like, this is a whole different conversation because like, you know, do we need to make money should we have a society where you are not valued unless you make money? Like, do we need that? I don't know. I mean, that's a whole different conversation,
sure.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to sort of, you know, place it in that sort of context. Like I've not interacted with any kind of AI music that I know of,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Unless it's secretly getting sprinkled in throughout stuff that I'm not aware of, but I haven't heard anything that's really been of interest or has captured me or sort of been like, oh, okay, this is something. I mean, I think there's things, you know, where they're pulling stems or they're doing, you know, instrument isolation stuff, which must be some version of an AI sort of algorithmic thing where you can pull, you know, single tracks apart and do things like that and iterate on those. But again, you know, it's not really, I just always feel like the quality of the work will always be felt. You know what I mean? People will respond if it's bad quality, it will be responded to badly. You know what I mean? And again, it's where it's being used. You know, I did see some commercial for some shitty, you know, pharmaceutical drug, and it said all AI generated, and it's a unicorn running down a street, and it's a beaver washing a dish or something. And it was like, yeah, that looks about like what it is. And but again, if they would have, you know,
and they're celebrating it. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
You know, I mean, that's the other thing is that like you know, it's dated. Well, everything is dated in a way,
sure.
Right? I mean, because you can't escape like the place and time that a thing was made. It's always printed in some way, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like the way that AI generated images and music from even a couple years ago or a year ago, like the way that sounds so particularly of its time, yet, you know, it is devoid of like human creation.
Sure.
And, you know, like that sort of even a human who's like really working to make something that is very generic or very or you know, like has mass appeal or something, like even that I think you can tell the difference, at least from AI from like a year ago. So I mean, it's also sort of use it at your own peril, because it's gonna that's part of why it's so why we that's part of the slop moniker, right?
Sure.
It's kind of like, it's like, you know, it can be so one-dimensional, right? It's like it's like a blip in the moment that it was created, and it might serve like some commercial purpose, but then it's like completely done, and it just exists as a garbage, you know?
Well, it's part of the brain rot process, which I think, you know, in some ways, you know, if you create a platform that is meant to just, you know, kind of see the worst of the worst in the shortest segments as possible, and allow you some sense of interactivity by skipping to the next one. It's kind of like speed dating terrible culture or something. You know, you just like, this is terrible. That's terrible. This is terrible. That's terrible. And you can do that for hours at a time. Then the quality, they recognized the fact that the quality doesn't need to be there because it's only existing for, you know, 1 to 5 seconds. You know, and so if you just need images, never ending supply of random images from that are no more than 5 seconds, then let a computer do that. You know, because humans putting in any thought or care into creating 5-second videos, it's just not worth it, you know, because it's this the attention economy. But again, it's lowering the standards so low. I guess what I'm saying is like, if you put the standards all the way down into the mud and the slop, you know, kind of idea, then it's just like, okay, well, and if that's enjoyable for you, then that's the bigger question of like, what have we done as a society to allow, you know, culture to become low quality that instead of embracing it, we can also just be like, yeah, this is terrible. I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch. And that's kind of what you do. You vote with your attention. Yeah. Like, I don't consume a lot of that stuff only because, again, I guess I'm old and I have other interests, but I do see kids being exposed to it. And if that's their primary, you know, sort of native media experience, they may never, you know, they may think that's the baseline versus that's being severely subpar culture. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I have a bunch of things but but I have a bunch of responses that you triggered. I'm gonna see if I can remember all of them, but like, I mean, one of them I was just thinking like, I mean, the 1 to 5 second, the tiny attention span, right? I mean, like we can see the commercial causes for this, right? And like the way that our advertising language and our disparity of wealth and our sort of like the progression of capitalism has like created this reality where we have such short attention spans, and it's like like the Twitter is related. Not that it is Twitter's fault. Like if Twitter didn't exist, it could have been another platform would have done that same type of thing. But the platforming, the way that the platform expresses itself, right, in these small chunks, right, like I think there are pretty clear sort of like larger economic causes for this type of communication, but that doesn't mean that the type of communication itself is bad. I think that like when we were kids, advertisements were different, but they were still shitty. Like it was still like this thing that the media, that it was this mediated content, and it was this type of advertising that we had to consume. And maybe there was more human originality in the content of the advertisements or something like that, but they were still fucking ads, and I still hated hearing them. And I still I don't like the sonic assaults of that, right? As a musician, especially, like, I don't want to hear your advertisement, right? Like, I just never want to hear it. And like, this is the progression of that. But I think that like artists, especially young artists of newer generations, like it's part of their sonic landscape, but also it's incumbent on them to find ways to both embrace the new modes of communication while critiquing the purpose of the advertisement and critiquing the whatever they want to critique. But I would say the important thing to critique is the lack of human engagement in any of this content, and the sort of, and as you say, like the low standards of engagement in terms of like what is the thing that you're consuming, like what is it giving to you? Like, and like, how are you relating to it? What is it doing to your brain? Right. Like there's like so many opportunities for critique there. I don't think that the answer is necessarily like, taking away the short bursts, right? Because like that's a way of communication, and that's the present that we live in.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating. Oh, well, I've taken up more time than I meant to. We're over the hour, but where can people? Yeah. But where do you want people to follow you and find out more and to interact with your work? What's the best way for people?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, the new album's called Farming. It's on Death Bomb Arc Records, which is Brian Miller. He's such a mensch, but an amazing curator of music, and has been doing it for a long time. And that label is incredible. So I'm honored to be on that label. So Farming's out there. You can listen there. And then, I got an Instagram, which is my name, but the first letters are reversed. So it's Head Turn at Instagram. I don't know when this comes out, but I'm playing in LA next week and in Chicago as well. So I've got a record release show going.
Great. Yeah. Where's your show in LA?
It's at 2220 Arts and Archives, which is the old bootleg theater. Yeah, it's a great venue.
Great. And what day is that on?
That is the 20th of November. And in Chicago, we're playing at the Athenaeum on the 22nd.
Cool.
Yeah. Not sure if this will be out by then, but either way,
this will be out.
I really appreciate you having me on.
We'll do this the morning of November 20th. So everybody, if you're listening to us tonight in LA, go to this is. Tell me the name. It's Space
2220.
2220. All right, this is different. Okay.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's in like Silver Lake, Filipino town. It's on Beverly and Alvarado. Great venue. Super cool. Awesome, man. Well, thank you so much. And then is there a good website? Just Death Bomb Arc Records? What is it? What's their website? I'll find it. Death Bomb Arc. Also my website, tedhearne.com. Got lots of music up there. Perfect. Yeah. Okay. There'll be links in the Thank you, Randy. Links in the show notes. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah, thanks so much for chatting it up. Radical. There we are. Ted Hearne. Thank you so much for coming on Hyphenate. Everybody go buy the record, Farming. You can go to tedhearne.com. You can also go to tedhearne.bandcamp.com, or you can follow him on the Instagrams at headturn on
Instagram. Yeah, and go see some shows. Go catch Ted tonight in LA or Saturday in Chicago. And next Saturday, go see Martin Atkins performing the Killing Joke Extremities in Chicago as well. Thank you, everybody. Remember, you can write in hyphenatehalftime@gmail.com. You can find me on the Instagrams at Randy S. Randall. And yeah, let me know what you're up to. Let me know what you got going on. Send me links to music. I'm always happy to hear new music and new people. And support independent artists. Support weirdos all over the world. Wherever you are, find a weirdo and go support them. All right. Happy holidays, everybody. Stay warm. Be safe.
I don't know. I mean, it's like to use music production and the timbre of the sound as this malleable parameter in the whole storytelling. Like that's something that can occur in an album, and I really wanted it to be placed with, albums of like experimental electronic music, right?